the radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Yaron Brook Show on this Sunday evening. 2 days. 2 days to the election. Actually, less than 2 days. I'll be voting. Don't know about you guys, but I'll be voting. Whoops. I need to put the video on. There we go. I'll be voting Tuesday morning. Don't want to stand in lines in the heat. Hopefully the lines won't be too bad. Hope you guys voted by mail or something, so you don't have to actually stand in line waiting. But I think videos come back. Have you got video now? No video. I think you guys are just behind the times. Video. Hi from Amsterdam. Hey. So yes, we vote. We start voting. People have already voted. A significant number of Americans have already voted. Many of us, though, are going to... there was vote by mail, but I was too distracted, too late to actually get a ballot and mail it in and do all that. So I'm stuck with going and standing in line and voting on Tuesday. Now, of course, I don't vote for president. I don't vote for the Senate or the House. Puerto Rico is not a state. It is a territory. So I don't get the privilege of voting for Trump or Biden, and I have no impact on that race, no impact on the Senate race, no impact on any of these. I will be voting. I will be voting for governor, for mayor of San Juan, and I'll be voting for Puerto Rican representative in Washington, D.C., representative being a non-voting kind of adjunct to Congress, but it's really a position that has no power. It's just a position of delegation of authority from the governor and the legislature in Puerto Rico to this official. So we'll be voting for all that. You know, I've got a list of who I'm voting for based on how supportive they are of business in Puerto Rico, how supportive they are of my particular tax status in Puerto Rico, how supportive they are of those kind of things, how corrupt or not corrupt they are, although I fear they're all corrupt. Anyway, I've got a list of who I'm going to be voting for, but we'll do that on Tuesday, and then go on with life. And I guess we'll hang around Tuesday night to see what kind of election results we have. It should be interesting. It should be interesting. I think a lot of you are going to be disappointed. But, you know, we'll see. We'll see. Who knows? Last 4 years ago was a bit of a surprise. We'll see if there is another surprise in the making this year. Okay, before we get into the election full steam and talk about elections in Arizona and in other states and in California and places like that, I want to talk about, what's been happening the last few days, really breaking news the last few days from Europe. And that is that European countries, country after country after country, are locking down. Severe lockdowns reminiscent of the lockdowns in the spring. Different countries are more or less severe. Germany is locking down for a month. France is locking down for at least a month. Italy has locked down portions of its economy. Significant portions, and now the UK is locking down their, locking down their economy for at least 4 weeks. So no bars, no restaurants, very little business activity other than what are called essential services. Of course, defined by the central planners in chief, those who I guess spend their time in 10 Downing Street, and who decide what's essential and what's not essential. And it really is striking right now. It's striking that you have got across Europe, you've got these lockdowns, and it in America, The idea of lockdowns, not lockdowns, it's almost 100% the debate, the discussion is political, right? Democrats want one thing, Republicans want another, and it's all about what tribe you belong to. But if you look across the pond, if you look across the Atlantic to Europe, Johnson is not a leftist. He is the leader of the Conservative Party. Macron is, he's center-left, but really a centrist, actually quite good and admirable in his position about Islam and about free speech in the last couple of weeks. So actually, my opinion of Macron has gone up dramatically. And yet, for lockdowns, Germany, Angela Merkel, usually pretty honest and straight shooting and pretty good on many issues, particularly economic ones. And she has instituted a lockdown in Germany. It really shows that the political class in the West, I'd say a couple of things. One, completely and utterly blew it with regard to this crisis. I mean, this second wave of cases was completely predictable. Everybody knew it was going to happen. And yet no planning, no preparation, no building the infrastructure for testing, tracing, and isolating, which we know from Asia works beautifully well when executed. But neither the United States nor Europe have been able to actually put it together in spite of having plenty of time, plenty of warning, plenty of knowledge. They can't do it. The incompetence of our political class is just unbelievable. It's just for this reason only. They should all be voted out of office for the utter and complete failure to deal with the COVID crisis. Even if the solution to the COVID crisis is to get on television, sit down with the people, the American people, the British people, and tell them that it's not that bad. And there are ways to deal with it that do not involve shutting down the world. There are ways to deal with it that do not involve eliminating liberty and freedom and giving power to government, unlimited power to government, of government to actually dictate where I can go, what I can do with my life, with every minute of my time. I mean, it is unbelievable and unprecedented that throughout the entire Western world, we have adopted the Chinese model of shutting down Wuhan rather than the Taiwanese model or the South Korean model, which, relatively speaking, left people free, but engaged in intense testing, tracing, isolating. Hong Kong, Singapore, Vietnam has done a better rights-respecting job than most of the people, most of the countries in the West. So it's truly, truly shocking to see this, and it doesn't seem political in the sense that, at least in Europe, it's parties on the right and parties on the left. It's parties in the center and parties on the right of center, left of center. It's not some grand leftist conspiracy to shut down the economy to destroy Trump's ability to win an election. That's not what happened in Europe. So it has to be broader than just politics. It's just incompetence, unthinking, panic, and a longing, I guess, to be China, to have the kind of power that the Chinese government has its own people. Of course, China, at least China, did lockdowns, but also did testing. Right? Right. And now IAN says China now does testing instead of lockdowns. Yes, now China does testing instead of lockdowns. But it started out with lockdowns. Now it does testing. And it isolates those people who test positive. And if you do that, you're done. But now, of course, in most Western countries, the virus has grown so far, so big that there's almost you almost can't catch up. There's not enough testing and tracing and isolating that you can do to stop this. We're going to have to probably live through it. But this was not necessary. A lot of people are going to die unnecessarily. And these lockdowns don't help. The statistics show it. Sweden, that didn't lock down, is not locking down now, has the same death rates as the UK, France, less than Italy, less than Spain. And in the second lockdown, I suspect in this winter rise, it looks like Sweden is doing fine. Looks like Sweden is actually going to do fine. Far better than all these other countries. Right? So, it's truly stunning and sad. Now, let me just say that in the UK, there is going to be a vote on Wednesday in the House of Parliament to approve the lockdown measures that the government is proposing. I encourage all those listeners in the UK and their friends and their compatriots and anybody you can get to in the UK. I encourage you to write to your representative. Remember, these politicians are your servants, your representatives. I encourage you to write to them and demand that they not pass this legislation. That they not pass this legislation. So you have an opportunity here to have an impact. Tell them that if they pass this legislation, you will vote them out of office next time. Even if that means voting in Labour just to punish them. To punish the Conservatives for what they are doing. So write to your representative. If you live in the UK, stop this massive violation of rights. This massive violation of our freedoms. This massive violation of our liberty. Sweden is a model not far away from you. And while Sweden didn't do this perfectly, far from perfect, particularly as compared to, again, the Asian countries, Sweden is a far better model than what Boris Johnson is proposing right now out of panic, and again, in spite of having no plan to properly deal with this crisis. Andrew writes, Boris Johnson is more of evidence that freedom won't be established by quirky individuals with hazy pro-liberty inclinations. Principles are needed. Absolutely. Absolutely. And no, I'm not for the New Zealand model either, or the Melbourne model. These are horrible models. These are the models that Europe is now implementing, and now it implemented them in the spring. It didn't help. They followed the same trajectory as Sweden. They had the same death rates as Sweden. They declined in the same way as Sweden. Oh, by the way, Belgium is also shutting down. So basically, Western Europe is shutting down, with the exception of Sweden. I think the Netherlands is shutting down. It's just unbelievable. These are rich countries. These are countries that could have invested in a strategy of testing, tracing, isolating. These are countries that could have been investing in a strategy that cocooned their elderly, that cocooned the people at risk. I just saw today a statistic that basically, if you're under 50, your chances of dying from this are almost zero, negligible, not worth thinking about. Between 50 to 70, your chances of dying of this are about double the chances of dying from the flu, 0.2%. High and probably related to health. If you're healthy in those age groups, you're probably still negligible, flu-like, or less. If you're 70 plus, the probability jumps to 5.4%. That's high. It's very high. And my guess is that is driven primarily by people in their 80s who seem to be the most susceptible to this virus. So again, isolate them. Isolate them. Penny asks, what if those in Asia had some antibodies that gave them better defenses from SARS? I mean, it's possible, and that might be one of the explanations for why it's less in Asia. But it's hard to believe in this sense. That is, in a globalized economy, in a globalized world in which we're traveling from country to country to country constantly, Asians are coming to Europe constantly, Europeans are going to Asia constantly. It's hard to believe that one part of the world has developed antibodies to certain viruses that did not spread across the world. Now, it's possible that these were short-lived viruses, they didn't expand widely. Hard to tell. Scientists will be studying this in the future, and maybe they will discover that that is the cause. I've heard other ideas that, you know, the Asian countries are more focused. Some of them have higher rates of vitamin D. Some of them have just take care of their immune system better. There might be all kinds of reasons. But it's clear that the CDC plan from before January, the CDC plan to deal with pandemics that goes back a decade and that was reinforced and that every country in the world, in a sense, signed off of because it was a good plan, never had lockdowns in it, never had masks in it. What it had was test, trace, isolate. This is kind of, 101, pandemic, how to deal with the pandemic. Leverage up your resources in testing, tracing, and isolate. Isolate the people who have it. And this is true of deadly diseases. This is what you do. Communicable deadly disease. Now, you could argue about how deadly is COVID and how, the extent to which you want, but that's the kind of debate we should be having. Not whether to test, trace, isolate, but how deadly is it and what extent do we isolate? How much do we, given how deadly it is. But that's not the discussion that's being had. There is no discussion. It's basically panic, hysteria, tribalism, and politics. And in Europe, I'd say it's mostly panic and hysteria. Now, what's interesting is, in Europe right now, there are demonstrations against all of this. There are demonstrations to do this. The violent demonstrations, places like in Italy, in Germany there were demonstrations, in Italy there were riots. We'll see what happens in the UK. We'll see what happens in France. Of course, France is also dealing with this wave of terrorism. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Europe overall copes with this, and to what extent. There is a trending on Twitter. There is I can't remember the exact statement, but it's something like, don't, even if they do a lockdown, ignore it. And let's see the extent to which Europeans are willing to stand up against these lockdowns. Europeans traditionally have not. Europeans traditionally have been very pro-government and pro-statism and do what the government tells you to do. Americans are the ones that usually stand up to government. I don't think the U.S. is going to try for lockdowns again. I think I think Americans would resist it too strongly. But let's see if Europeans resist it. And the sad fact is, Americans did not resist it the first go round. So I think the lesson learned for politicians is that Americans are softened. Americans are much more open and susceptible to statism and lockdowns than they were in the past. Anyway, a lot going on in the world. Barcelona, a lot of demonstrations in Barcelona, riots in Barcelona, cops and rioters going after each other, fires and, demonstrators starting fires in trash bins. And I haven't seen any looting. That's only, I guess, in Philadelphia. But no looting in Europe that I've seen. I've seen mainly demonstrations and riots and attacking the police. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Ruther says USA lockdowns half-assed compared to Europe's. Not all of them. New York was a pretty harsh lockdown. So was other places, even in Texas. You remember that woman who was put on trial for opening up her salon? I mean, she was ultimately released from prison, but no, parts of the country, they took it very seriously, and they were very harsh. Here in Puerto Rico, for a while, we had very, very severe lockdowns. Not anymore. There's basically no lockdown right now in Puerto Rico. 55% limited capacity on restaurants, 30% in cinemas, but other than that, pretty much open. You can go to the beach. The beaches are crowded. You have to wear a mask. There's a mask, government is forcing us to wear masks, another massive violation of our rights. Government has no business in doing these things. Again, all it has a business is protecting rights. The way you protect rights during a pandemic, again, test, trace, isolate. It's been like this forever. And you could argue, given the government's having involvement in the medical system and in hospitals and places like that, isolate the elderly so that they don't overwhelm the hospitals. But how you exactly isolate the elderly without violating rights and do it smart is tricky. But there are ways to do it, but there's been no effort. There'd be no effort to do it. Indeed, we know that in New York State, elderly were sent back into nursing homes to infect the rest of the people, elderly who had COVID, to infect everybody else. Our political system, I mean, this is the thing about COVID. COVID has shown that our political leaders are incompetent. They're incompetent with the pandemic. They're completely ignoramuses, incompetent, no plan, no execution, from Trump to Johnson to Macron to whoever's running Italy these days to Germany, to every one of these countries. They're absolutely 100% incompetent. And I didn't include all the governors in the United States, possible exception of Florida that has done a relatively good job, although in Florida you get lockdowns on local levels, on city levels. So we have a political class that has basically been shown to be completely and utterly incompetent. And therefore, they need to pay a price. And part of my argument about not voting for Trump is he needs to pay a price. So, we will see what happens. In Europe, again, if you're in the UK, if you know people in the UK, encourage everybody to write in to your representative and tell them to vote no on a lockdown. Vote no on a lockdown. All right, I think that's all I have to say about European lockdowns. It's very, very depressing. Anne asks, another one of these inside objectivism questions. Bonnie claims you didn't honor an agreement to create a conflict resolution system. Is that something that should be implemented within objectivism? No, I don't think it should be implemented within objectivism. I don't see the purpose of it. It's cultish, and I've always been against it. But at the same time, I try to accommodate. I try to do something. The idea that I didn't honor an agreement is blatantly false. Blatantly false. So now I don't want to litigate that on my show. I don't want to litigate it on Facebook. I don't want to litigate it anywhere. I expect you will see a bunch of posts from Bonnie criticizing me of all kinds of evil, all kinds of broken agreements, all kinds of incompetencies, all kinds of things that I am wrong on, did bad things about, and harmful, generally harmful to objectivism, the cause, or whatever. I have no intention of commenting on all of them. You can ask me specific questions if you're interested, if they had broader applications, like should there be a conflict resolution system in objectivism, whatever the hell that means. Objectivism is not a cult. You get to decide who to associate with and who not to associate with. You get to decide what to do with whom, what. I'm not going to dictate that to you. But I do not intend to. I do not intend to litigate this in public. I don't think it's worth it. You guys have to make a judgment call. You're gonna make a judgment call based on what you know of me and what you know of him and what you know of other people, and you guys decide. I am not going to release emails and commentary and write 55-page documents trying to defend myself against random accusations. You're just going to have to live with the fact that you will hear a lot of negative things about me, and I will not be defending myself. All right, thank you, JDS. Sends support for the objectivist. Virtue shows the energy it gives me and appreciation to Troy for the idea. Yes, I agree. Fabulous shows. Not a lot of people watching them, so I encourage those of you not watching them to watch them. A lot of people are really excited about them. JDS writes for yesterday's show on honesty. People really like those shows. Limbeck, thank you. That's very generous. And you know, it's a refresher for those of you who know it. For those of you new to objectivism, it's to get you in. It's an introductory. I then encourage you to go read Leonard Peikoff. I encourage you to read others. Ayn Rand, of course, but Leonard Peikoff, and listen to his courses on these topics. But I think hopefully some of this is inspiring for you, and will get you through the day in an inspiring way. So I encourage you guys to listen to them, not just because I want to get my views up, although that's always a good thing, but mainly because I just think you will benefit from it, and I think you are good. Ann says he wants to litigate it in the courts. He wants to. I haven't seen all this. Whatever post Ann or whatever issue Ann is bringing to the forefront, I have no idea. If litigating in the courts, is there a lawsuit that's going to happen? Did I miss something? I've obviously missed some posting that has brought out a bunch of stuff about the Ayn Rand Institute that is anyway, that somebody wants to litigate, I guess. All right. I don't want to litigate it. Got better things to do with my life. Some people obviously don't. But I'm curious what you're referring to, Ann. Pro sports teams in the UK are going to fold from this. Do you think that sort of cultural impact might shock people awake? Could they affect the owners, athletes, galvanize a response if they spoke up? Maybe. I don't know. Sports teams might fold. The government might bail them all out, particularly if you're an important institution. You'd be bailed out. If you're not an important institution, you won't be bailed out. I think the people who are really going to suffer from this are the kind of the middle ground where you had a business, you were doing okay, but this is just going to destroy you. And, if you're big, if you're famous, if you're a cultural institution, then the government will bail you out. But if you're anything below that, then they won't, and you will suffer, and you will be crushed. And that is sad, and that is tragic. All right. John, thank you. I appreciate that sentiment. I'm sorry I have to deal with this crap as well. Those of you interested in this whole idea of why can't we all get along, I just posted a video, I think this morning or yesterday, about my thoughts on why we shouldn't all get along. And it's fine not to get along. And we can all do our own thing. And we don't have to all work together, and we don't have to all be friends, and we all don't have to all agree on everything. We don't have to all get along. We're not, again, a cult. We don't have a cult leader. We are individuals, and individuals disagree, and individuals have disagreements, and individuals go their own way, and they should be allowed and left alone to do that. All right, let's see. Elections. Oh, my favorite topic in the world. 2020 elections. So it's going to be interesting. We've got 2 days. Tuesday night, about this time, I think we will start getting, maybe not, maybe in an hour, we will start getting early results from the ballots. Obviously, I think the two most important races are going to be for the presidency and for the Senate. I doubt we'll know the outcome for the Senate that night. I think the Senate's going to be very close. There are a number of very close races around the country for the Senate in places that I think Republicans never imagined that they would have to fight for their lives, like places like North Carolina, places like Iowa, places like Maine, where there's a longtime incumbent, but maybe she was always vulnerable. Places like Georgia, where I still think Republicans will win, but it's going to be close. Places like even Alaska, where again, I think the Republicans will win, but it's pretty close. I mean, the Senate Republicans will probably gain a seat in Alabama. There's an outside chance they would gain a seat in Michigan. So if you live in Michigan, please go and vote a Republican in the Senate, because they'll need another senator. That'll give them a majority of 4, but then they're likely to lose 4 in places like, Iowa even. Joni Ernst, who is this up-and-comer superstar in the Republican Party, is fighting for her political life in Iowa, which is shocking for the Republican Party. Now, it could be that I'm delusional and I'm wrong, and of course the polls are all wrong, and it could be, they were 4 years ago, and Republicans are going to do fine in the Senate. We'll see. Yeah, I mean, Iowa is safe. Is the senator safe in Iowa? That's the question. I think Iowa. If it doesn't happen, then it doesn't happen. Then if Republicans hold the Senate, good. If she's at +4, that's good. We will see, of course, on Tuesday night. Again, +4 is closer than it should be in a place like Iowa, but we will see Friday night what the outcome is, and we will see in the days, not Tuesday night, we'll see in the days following Tuesday whether the Senate stays Republican or switches to Democrat. Of course, the main race is for president. The polls are pretty clear. I know polls are not to be trusted after 2016, after Brexit, after the UK elections, after the Israeli elections. Polls have been, for the last 6, 7, 8, maybe 8 years, polls have been dramatically underestimating the right in both the UK, in Israel, and in the United States. They didn't underestimate the right in the midterm elections, when Republicans who were supposed to gain a bunch of seats landed up not gaining anywhere near what they thought they would. I think they held steady, or they gained 1, but they were expected to gain significant seat. It was their chance to actually go to 60, and they did not succeed, and the polls were fairly accurate there. Democrats, increased their lead in the House. So in the 2018 polls were actually quite accurate. We will see who wins on Tuesday night the presidency. I expect right now that Trump will lose. I expect that Trump will lose, as I've said before, significantly. I think clearly, not ambiguously. I think he will lose. But we'll see. We'll see on Tuesday. Who am I to speculate? We'll talk a little bit about the future Republican Party in a minute. But I want to turn. I want to turn to Trafalgar. Yeah, Trafalgar is now being very accurate, and it sometimes is and sometimes isn't. And it's a partisan poll. It's usually hired by Republicans to do polling. So anyway, we'll see. I am not a pollster. I'm certainly not an expert on predicting elections, and I think it's going to be. I mean, just my sense as an amateur is that Trump is going to lose. But I thought we'd focus a little bit on some other elections rather than focusing on the president, because I've said a lot about the presidential election and a lot about what it means. So one election that I think is going to be interesting, and I know I have a lot of listeners to the show in Portland, Oregon, where there's actually a billboard for the Yaron Brook Show, 2 billboards for the Yaron Brook Show. I don't know if they've had any impact, and maybe we have more Portland, Oregon listeners than usual. I don't know. But in Portland, Oregon, there's an election for the mayor of Portland. Now, the reason this is significant is that Portland has come to represent Antifa. It has come to represent rioting and demonstrations that turned into riots almost on a nightly basis for months and months, these riots continued. And of course, we all know that nothing really was done about the riots. The police their hands were tied. They did almost nothing over the last month. Police have been banned also from using tear gas. They were previously banned from really engaging in any meaningful way with the rioters, so that the rioters basically did what they want in the city of Portland. You had a mayor, Mayor Wheeler, who has been very pro-riot, pro-demonstrations, has been anti the police, handcuffed the police, limited the police. Obviously was against the deployment of federal agents to Portland, Oregon. While that lasted, it didn't last for very long, and they didn't seem to have done anything really. And here's Wheeler, who is he's way out on the left, Black Lives Matter all the way, systemic racism all the way, cut the police budget significantly, wants to cut it more, is still debating how to do it exactly and what exactly to do. And Wheeler is being challenged. Not by some moderate centrist. You don't expect anybody, pro on the right to challenge Wheeler. This is Portland, Oregon, after all. Not by somebody, a centrist, who would like to bring some semblance of law and order, some semblance of normalcy to downtown Portland. No. That would be ridiculous. What we want what we've got in Portland is a challenger who is way, if that's even possible, way to the left of Wheeler. I can't pronounce her name, but it's Ian Nerone, something like that. Anyway, she is clearly a supporter not just of demonstrations and Black Lives Matter, but a supporter of Antifa. I mean, she doesn't come out and say I support Antifa, but what she says is, what she had a bumper stick as, everyday anti-fascist always. Now that's code for Antifa. Antifa is short for anti-fascist, which means pro-violence, pro-rioting. She has said during the riots and demonstrations, she advocated for, she said, demonstrations are probably not enough to actually get people's attention and to get action. We need more. Basically, supporting the riotings. She wants to dramatically defund the police. As far as I know, I don't know about eliminating it, but reduce its budget significantly. Wheeler has only cut $15 million out of a $250 million budget and is resisting doing much more. She would gut the police force. Beyond that, as you'd expect, she is so she's cutting. She wants to get $50 million from the police budget. $50 million. So out of a $250 million budget, she wants to cut 50. She is, as you'd expect, a passionate advocate for public transportation, bike commuting. I mean, he calls it evil, we know that. And she wants to have municipal Wi-Fi. You don't get enough fast Wi-Fi. It's not good enough. Google's not doing a good enough job. People don't have enough broadband. 5G, who cares about 5G? So she wants public municipal Wi-Fi. And she wants to increase taxes on Airbnb to fund a renters bailout fund. So to bail out renters, because, renters are being allowed not to pay their rent. Thank you, Donald Trump, by the way. That leftist policy is due to Donald Trump. But at some point, they're going to have to pay their rent, starting, let's say, in January. She wants the government basically to pay the rent for them. She wants to make renters now wards of the state. Wards of the state. So, she's about as left as they come. I mean, she does want to do some good things. Oh, she wants to eliminate parking. and replace it with trees. That's a very leftist thing. Again, cars are evil. Anything we can do to make your life as a car owner hard, to make it impossible for you to find parking, to make it to increase the number of traffic jams, to do all that, we will do. And of course, but she does want to, for example, legalize sex work. I'm all for that. And she wants to allow, this is a good one, non-citizens to vote in local and state elections. What's the point then of citizenship? Right. And says Trump is going to be the only one who won't hose landlords. Why? I mean, he's the one who passed a moratorium until January 1 on rents. He basically ruled that you don't have to pay rent, and you can be kicked out of your apartment if you don't pay rent until January 1. Why would we think Trump is going to do anything positive with that, given his track record? I mean, he's already been president for 4 years. We know what he does. This is not a mystery anymore. Anyway, Portland is going to be interesting to watch. Do we go full out Antifa in Portland? I actually think Portland deserves an Antifa mayor. I'm sorry, I know there's some good people who live in Portland, but maybe it's time to move. Maybe it's time to move. At least one of my Portland friends has now moved to Austin, Texas. Good for him. But maybe it's time for the rest of you to move. All right. All right. Other interesting things that are going to go on election night. A lot of ballot initiatives. Now, you know how we often say America is not a democracy. It's a constitutional republic. Except at the state level, when it comes to these ballot initiatives are basically majority rule. There's very little you can do after a ballot initiative passes. That is the law of the land, and that's majority, straight majority. And sometimes that works in favor of liberty, and sometimes, often, it works against liberty. Let's take some of these initiatives that are being looked at. Particularly, let's start in California. California's big on ballot initiatives. Not all states are. Maybe the most important one, or the one that's going to get the most visibility, and the one people are going to talk about the most, is called Proposition 22. Proposition 22 is an attempt to reverse AB 5, which is a state law passed about a year ago that made it illegal, in a sense, to hire independent contractors to do certain jobs. So, for example, Uber and Lyft drivers would have to be recognized as employees with everything that required: health insurance, benefits, 401ks, firing and hiring restrictions, all the restrictions that California places on hiring and firing, all the restrictions California places on employees. So instead of taking a model that has worked amazingly well, where people choose to use their car using an app, they get certified by Uber or Lyft, and then they get to make some extra income on the side by transporting people around using their own car. They have to have insurance, they have to have background checks, just basic stuff that Uber does in order to safeguard its investment in them so that it doesn't get into trouble. So, this was passed about a year ago. Uber and Lyft are basically being in the court since then, trying to postpone it, trying to drag this on. They've started a proposition which would reverse it. Wouldn't reverse it completely. They've given in to certain things. They're going to give the drivers health insurance and a few other things. But basically it reverses much of AB 5. Now, this should be a no-brainer. If you value liberty and you value freedom, this should be a no-brainer. Not only that, if you value Uber and Lyft, which Californians do, Californians use Uber and Lyft a lot, then you would want this. Yeah, well, you would want to repeal AB 5. So this is really a test. of how statists California want to be, even when it goes against their interests, even when it goes against their pocketbook, because Lyft and Uber are going to get more expensive, or Lyft and Uber will leave the state, and their replacements, I guarantee, will be more expensive. Right now, it seems to be pretty close. I think 22 will pass. But it's not clear. It's not clear. We will see. It's a really important one because it'll be a bellwether for other states as well in terms of a lot of states would like to restrict Uber and Lyft in their activities. And a lot of people on the left would like to do it in favor of unions and taxi drivers. There are lots of special interest groups that want to kill Uber and Lyft. And then, of course, next is Airbnb, and you can go on and on and on from there. Elsewhere in California, there is a Proposition 15. Now, one of the things that kind of launched the mildly pro-markets agenda of the 1980s, lower taxes, less regulations, generally less government involvement in the economy, was a proposition that was passed in California in 1978. In California, in those days, California was at the forefront of moving us towards less taxes. And what the Proposition 1978 did was it made it impossible for legislatures to increase property taxes. So your property taxes were locked at the value of the property when you bought it. And that applied to commercial and residential properties. So you can imagine that over the years, as property prices in California have gone through the roof, people who have held on to their homes, their property taxes have not gone up much at all. And property taxes, as a consequence, are very, very, relatively speaking, low as compared to all the other taxes in the state. Proposition 15 wants to undo this for commercial property. Of course, they're not going to do it for residential because people are not going to vote to increase their property taxes immediately. I mean, a huge spike in property taxes. But business, that's fine. We can screw businesses. Right? We can go after businesses. So they want to raise property taxes on businesses. This is a state in California that is seeing migration out of businesses. A state in California that's seeing high net worth individuals leave. This is a state in California that sees a shrinking population. Not fast, because a lot of people are still going into places like Hollywood and Silicon Valley, or will once the pandemic is gone. But generally, this is a state in fiscal trouble. And they want to raise property taxes, which will go, of course, whenever you raise taxes, what do you say it's going to go for? Schools. It's supposed to raise as much as $12.5 billion per year. One wonders, once businesses start leaving the state, how much it will actually raise. It's a big fight, $67 million spent in support, $72 million spent in opposition. Right now, it looks like it's going to pass. They're going to repeal the cap on property taxes for commercial property. Right now, the polls show 49 to 42. We will see. If you live in California, vote no on yes on 22, no on 15. This is why you should go to vote, no matter who you're voting for president. Even in California, where it doesn't really matter who you vote for president, vote for the propositions that are important. Proposition 16. In 1996, here's another one that will surprise you if you know California. In 1996, California was at the forefront of a movement nationally that banned the use of affirmative action in public college admission and government hiring decisions. Now, California universities found ways around it. But there was a huge push in 1996 to ban affirmative action, and they succeeded. The proposition passed. Proposition 16 seeks to repeal it. seeks to repeal it. Now, what's interesting here is we're talking about leftist California, that it looks like this is going to fail. Again, vote no on 16. But it looks like this is going to fail by maybe 11 points. So Californians are not willing to go back to racial quotas in spite of Black Lives Matter, in spite of the governor and the legislature in California talking about potential reparations, in spite of all this racist nonsense coming out of Sacramento, the people of California do not want to reinstate affirmative action. Now that's interesting. So it means that there are a lot of leftists who are moderate leftists who, while they vote Democratic, are not willing to go there, are not willing to go to the racist left, to identity politics, to critical race theory, whatever it is, and are not willing to reinstate affirmative action. And that is good. That is good. So vote no on 16. And then finally for California, we have Proposition 25. The legislature passed in 2018 a law that would make California the first state to pass legislation to end cash bail. This would repeal that. Again, I don't think getting rid of cash bail is a good thing. We've seen that in New York, and the consequences have not been good. Bail is important. Bail gets people to show up in court. So I recommend, again, voting yes on Proposition 25. All right. So if you're in California, my recommendations for whatever it's worth. Yes on 22, no on 15, no on 16, and yes on 25. All right, let's see. What else do we have here? There's also a number of propositions taking aim at the Electoral College. You know, a number of states have signed up to a pact, an interstate pact, to abolish the Electoral College. But they are pledging that their electoral votes go to the winner of the national popular vote, no matter how the state actually votes. But they will only do that when a majority of states join this pledge. Now, Colorado has joined this pledge, but there is a Proposition 113 in Colorado, which I guess wants to get them, that's enough to put the law before, yes, wants to get them to reject this law, to get them to leave this pledge. Now, that would be a good thing. So, vote, what is it, Proposition 113, vote for the proposition in Colorado, for Proposition 113 in Colorado. By the way, all of these political recommendations I'm making, everything I say on this show about politics and everything I say on the Iran Book Show, period, is not me speaking as the chairman of the board of the Iron Man Institute, but me speaking as me. So anything I say about politics is not the Institute, it is me. The Institute is not allowed, because it is a 501c3, to have political views. Limbeck, thank you. Wow. Really appreciate that. All right. There's a measure 1110 in Oregon. Remember Oregon, Portland, Oregon? That would decriminalize the possession of all drugs in small amounts. This is good. I mean, sometimes it's good to have leftists around. So this will be really good. Although manufacturing and sales would still be illegal. That's unfortunate. So any money not spent on drug enforcement to fund addiction and recovery programs, better. So I would vote for Measure 110 in Oregon. There are also measures in Arizona, Montana, New Jersey, South Dakota to legalize the use of marijuana, recreational marijuana. I expect all of them to pass. The one thing Americans seem to be united around is the God-given right to smoke marijuana. I'm surprised the federal government hasn't taken this on yet. In Colorado, Proposition 115 would ban abortions after 22 weeks of pregnancy, unless the mother's life is in imminent danger Vote no on Proposition 115 in Colorado. It's interesting that over the last 12 years in Colorado, they've had 3 anti-abortion ballots initiatives. All of them have been rejected, and I expect this one to be rejected as well. Right. Vote no on Proposition 115. Don't make Colorado one of those backward states. It's a fantastic place, although drifting to the left in all kinds of ways. Let's see. I don't know what 113 is. Did we do 113 already? Yes, vote no on 113, absolutely. All right, in Florida, Amendment 2 would raise the state's minimum wage to $15 an hour by 2026. It looks like it's a close call. It needs 60% of the vote to pass. So if you live in Florida, if you live in Florida, please, for the sake of your economy, for the sake of the poor, for the sake of young people struggling to get that first job, for the sake of inner city youths, vote, and for your own sake, vote no on Amendment 2. In Illinois, oh, this is a big one. There are a couple of big tax ones. Illinois and Arizona. Illinois currently, surprisingly, has a flat tax. The income tax is flat. It's 4.95% and flat. And because it's flat, constitutionally, I guess the Illinois Constitution makes it flat. They're afraid to raise it because everybody pays it. So a big priority for Governor Pritzker is to eliminate the flat tax and make it a progressive tax, a graduated income tax. Change the Illinois Constitution. Now, he has put $60 million or something up to $60 million of his own money into this to try to get this passed. Ken Griffin Jr., the billionaire, hedge fund billionaire, has put in $50 million to defeat it. The idea is, if it is defeated, that they would significantly raise taxes on the wealthy being anybody makes over $250,000 a year. And that's how they're going to close the deficit they have. They have a $3 billion deficit. So this is a big one. Flat taxes are great. Silver taxes are better, but flat taxes are great. If the flat tax in Illinois has saved Illinois from losing a big chunk of its population, even more than it has already. The flat tax is a good thing in Illinois. Vote no on this. I don't know what it's called. So whatever it is that's going to the voters in Illinois. In the meantime, in Arizona, Proposition 208, called again, whenever they raise taxes, what's it called? The Invest in Education Act. Of course, they want to guilt you. Would impose a 3.5% surtax on incomes above $250,000. They're copying California. Right? Incomes above $250,000, $500,000 for joint filers. Current top rate is 4.5%. It would raise to 8%. That will move the state to the 10th highest income tax rate in the country from the 11th lowest right now. Arizona would move much closer to California and away from Nevada. Nevada has no state income tax. Now, what's interesting here is that Arizona has been a net importer of what? A net importer of Californians who have been escaping high taxes in California by moving to beautiful Arizona and benefiting from the relatively low taxes in Arizona. And now they're going to raise taxes in Arizona to make it more like California. So those people are not going to come. Art Laffer, Irwin and Tony and Stephen Moore have estimated that tax increases would result in the migration to Arizona of 700,000 fewer people. It would mean 237,000 fewer jobs and a reduction of $25.5 billion in personal income growth over the next 10 years. Since 1992, Arizona has gained more than 200,000 tax returns and almost $12 billion in adjusted gross income from Californians. Illinois has lost more than 65,000 people to Arizona, and Arizona's gained $5 billion in taxes. New York has lost 37,000 people and $2.3 billion in taxes to Arizona. But what the hell? It's not fair that people earning more than $250,000 a year not pay much higher taxes. It's not fair. And it's amazing that these people moving from leftist states are bringing their leftist politics. This is what happened in Colorado. This is what's happening in Arizona. This is what's happening all over the country, where the left is exporting its people. They're leaving because taxes are too high. There's too much regulation. Cost of living is too high. And they go to their new states and they vote all the same way. And this is the mistake about people voting with their feet, and if they just move to the right places, everything becomes better. No, it turns out they bring their wrong, bad policies over with them. And the reason is that all these policies are not driven by economics. They're not driven by politics. They're not driven by self-interest. They're driven by altruism. They're driven by guilt. Why are all these bills called the Expand Education Act, the Greater Education Act, Make Education Great Again Act? Why are they called that? For the impact, for the guilt. If you're guilting people into voting to increase their own taxes so that we can expand education, why do people feel guilty for making a lot of money? Why do people feel guilty for keeping the money? Why do people feel guilty for paying low taxes? Because of altruism. So unless you challenge altruism long term, unless we eviscerate altruism, unless we defeat altruism, nothing's going to change. Nothing is going to change. And that is truly tragic. Truly tragic. All right. Let's see. Let's take some of your super chat questions. Okay. Would you ever have Dave Ramsey on the show to argue over the validity of taking on debt in order to rise economically? I listen to both of you guys, but you both come at it from entirely opposite perspectives. I mean, I don't know if I want to argue with Dave Ramsey. I mean, I think Dave Ramsey does a very good service for those people who probably shouldn't take on debt. I think, and I'm not talking about you, Jason, but other people who are not responsible with their debt, who can't, if they have a credit card, can't help themselves but spend it on frivolous stuff. I think Ramsey, by emphasizing getting out of debt and emphasizing not getting into debt, for those people is very good for them. My advice is to rational people, to people who can plan, to people who can not go for instant gratification, for people who are not going to spend over their limits, for people who don't take on too much debt, who can be rational about the level of debt, to people like me. I took on debt throughout my youth and did fine throughout my poor, my 20s and 30s when I didn't have money. I took on debt. But I did it rationally, thoughtfully, with a plan in place about my future. So it's not that I disagree with Dave Ramsey on principle. I think his audience and my audience are different audiences. And I think if you can't be responsible, you cannot control yourself, then, as he says, take a scissors, cut up your credit cards, get out of debt. That should be your top priority. But for somebody rational, somebody who knows what they're doing, who can plan, I think that is the wrong approach. Jason Fish asks, if you discipline your kids with a belt, should you go to jail? I don't think so. I think going to jail would require much more significant abuse than that. I was hit with a belt. Not many times, I think 3 times in my childhood by my father. I don't think my father should have gone to jail for it. I don't think it was right, but it didn't destroy me either, right? So, no, I don't think they should go to jail. Again, you'd need to think through, and I have not thought through, what qualifies as abuse? When does it get to the point of abuse? And we have a legal system that I think is pretty good at that and has been pretty good at it, over decades, right? Jason also asked, do you know Penn Jillette? Is he an objectivist? Yeah, I do know Penn Jillette. I mean, not well. I've been to the show a couple of times. I've hung out with Penn and Teller behind the set. I had dinner with Penn once. I had lunch with Teller once. No, I don't think either one of them is an objectivist. I think, if anything, Teller is probably closer to being an objectivist than Penn. They both love Ayn Rand. They both have a huge amount of respect for Ayn Rand. I think Penn is much more of a libertarian, and actually now he's kind of moderating some of his views. It's hard to tell. I don't know, but I think he's much more of a libertarian than he is an objectivist. I think Teller is much more of an objectivist, much more thoughtful about these ideas, more philosophical, I think, than Penn. But they're both good guys, and they're both incredibly entertaining. They're both super smart. They're very, very nice and friendly, great entertainers, amazing magicians. So, yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of both Penn and Teller, but I don't think they're. I mean, you'd have to ask them if they think they're objectivists, but I don't think they consider themselves. Michael asked, does the dim hypothesis say America is doomed or will be doomed if we do not change course? And what does doom mean exactly? A dark ages of 1,000 years of fascist rule? Well, I don't think it necessarily means a dark ages or 1,000 years of fascist rule. It does mean authoritarianism. It does mean an era of authoritarianism. How long that era lasts, who knows? Whether authoritarianism leads to a true dark ages, who knows? I'm skeptical about using the dark ages as a metaphor for the future. I don't think that's quite how it's going to be. But and the fact that it's happening in America doesn't mean it has to happen globally. But it does, I think what it's predicting is authoritarianism in America. How long? I don't think it tries to predict that. So that's what do means. Do means authoritarianism. What does it mean to change course? It would mean to have better ideas, to have better ideas injected into the culture more than anywhere else, and ultimately manifest in politics. But good ideas do not start in politics. They start in the culture, and the dim hypothesis is very clear about how that is done and kind of the areas that Leonard Peikoff thinks that where these ideas need to be introduced in science, in education, and in the arts. Science, education, and art, right? Those are the areas in which we need integration, rational ideas, a proper epistemology. So you will know we're heading in the right direction when there's significant cultural institutions that are engaged in curriculum and teaching and education based on an integrated, rational curriculum. You will know we're heading in the right direction when we'll have physicists and scientists broadly using a proper epistemology in thinking about their science. We'll be moving in a proper direction when romantic art becomes popular again, or there's some, in certain corners or places here and there is significant rise in romantic art. Those are the kind of areas. So again, Leonard is very clear in the dim hypothesis that it is about culture first. And that, that's what will drive ultimately the politics. Would you ever have, we did that already. Let me see if there's any other $20 ones. Yeah. I'm losing Facebook friends over my pro-Ayn Rand posts. I'm not surprised. I know rationally I shouldn't care, but emotionally it still bothers me. How do you not care about your reputation when you know you're doing the right thing? You just got to continuously reinforce to yourself that you are doing the right thing, that you are on the side of goodness, of right, of justice, if you want, right? That, you have to make sure you're not being obnoxious for the sake of being obnoxious. You're not being, antagonistic for the sake of being antagonistic. That you are presenting your ideas, and if people are rejecting you, then so be it. I mean, I understand why it's hard. I mean, I get it all the time. I mean, you see it on the chat here, but you see it in my Facebook numbers decline when I post anything anti-Trump, or if I post anything, well, anything that challenges Republicans on anything. I lose people on other things. They know my Iran affiliation, but I have to be right in line with their views. Otherwise I'm history. So it's you've got to just suck it up and accept the fact that they are wrong. They're wrong. As long as you're doing what you think is right, you've got to constantly reinforce that in your own mind and focus on the good. Focus on the people that are being added as your friends. Focus on the new people you're meeting. Focus on the people that are valuable, right? I focus on the people here who tell me, you know, how much they love certain shows or their support through Super Chat. Your support through Super Chat. That's what keeps me going, in spite of the fact that some people hate my guts and some people are dropping me like crazy, and even people within objectivism are writing horrible things about me. That's life. Alexi asks, this is a good question, have you watched Queen's Gambit yet? Yes. I actually finished it last night. It's really good. I really enjoyed it. I recommend it. It's on Netflix. It's a new show. It's about a young woman who is a chess prodigy. It's not based on a true story, although it has some resemblances in some aspects to the story of Bobby Fischer. But it is it's fabulous. I love the ending. It's ultimately super benevolent. It's interesting. The characters are interesting. It's very character focused. The girl is a difficult girl. She has difficult challenges, psychological. Her background, she's an orphan, and I'm not going to give it away. But she's also this amazing prodigy. And how she overcomes the challenges, how her friends rally around her, what it means, friendship, and who are your friends, and how, for example, a lot of the people she beats in chess ultimately all become her friends and rally around her and support her in her quest to be world champion. No, she doesn't go crazy. It has a benevolent ending. It really is fabulous. It really is fabulous. I very, 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 very much enjoyed it. So, yeah, you guys should definitely check it out. It's called Queen's Gambit, which is, I guess, a strategy in chess. Or maybe it's a strategy in chess invented for the series. It's a limited series, 7 episodes, no season 2. It has a beginning, middle, and end. It clearly ends, and I was sad when it ended. I wanted more, which is always a good sign. When a series ends and you want more, that is a good sign. So really, really good. So I encourage you to watch it. Queen's Gambit on Netflix. All right, let's run through the rest of the questions. We'll talk about the Republican Party in the future after we have the election results, I guess. What if Trump refuses to leave? Look, I think if he loses by a significant margin, he won't refuse to leave. He'll leave. If he loses by a small margin and he's challenging the election, it'll go through the courts. I think ultimately if the courts rule against him, I think he will leave. And if he refuses to leave, I think he will be escorted out. I think that the Republican Party is still not that crazy as to not rally around whoever, the U.S. Marshals, the military, whoever is responsible for escorting somebody out. But I don't think that'll happen. I think he will leave. Somebody says, I want Trump, Republican Senate, and Federalist Society to choose a replacement for Breyer's seat for a 7-2 split. Am I wrong? Dems always select judges who rule for more government power except gay marriage. Well, I'm not sure. I don't trust conservatives. I don't want them to have a 7-2 margin. I think that's way too much, particularly today when so much of this is politicized and not where they've lost touch with the Constitution. And we'll see if any of these judges are better in terms of the Constitution than others. No, I've said over and over again, and certainly I don't think getting another judge in the Supreme Court is worth having another 4 years of Donald Trump. So I'm against having Donald Trump as president. I am for Republicans holding the Senate because I am hoping that they manage to somehow slow the leftist train wreck as it tries to mow down the American people. So that's my hope. Trump loses. I hope he loses by a lot. And the Republicans maintain the Senate. I know that's a contradiction. If he loses by a lot, they'll probably lose the Senate. But I'm asked what I hope, not what I think. As I've said before, I think that is the only hope for the future of the Republican Party, and that in 2022 we have 2024. Sorry, we have a good, a decent candidate. I also think that if the Democrats do win the Senate, I think that in 2022 there'll be a backlash against the Democrats, as there seems to be constantly in midterm elections. I think Republicans could retake the Senate and gain on the Democrats in the House. Whether they can take the House, I don't know. But depending on how wacky a Biden administration becomes, the more it goes to the left, the more Americans will vote for Republican candidates for the House and Senate. Fundamentally, this country's majority is in the center. Like it or not, they're in the center. They don't want crazy left. That's what happened with Obama. He kept losing in the Senate and the House. He kept losing and losing and losing because the American people wanted a bulwark, wanted something to stop his inclination to go leftwards. Same thing happened with Bill Clinton in 1994, right? We got a Republican wave in the House that blocked any effort he made to go crazy left. And I think that's what will happen in 2 years. I prefer if Republicans just win the Senate outright so we don't have to wait for 2 years. Portland is such a beautiful city, but it's almost entirely comprised of freaks and weirdos. How did it get like this? I really don't know. I mean, the fact is, cities in the United States are mainly left. Businesses in cities are mainly left. Not just regular people. But I don't know what the history of Portland is, how it became so kind of wacky left. Maybe somebody who lives in Portland can enlighten us, or I can look it up somewhere. Where can I see the Blake Scholl talk from yesterday with ARI? I was looking forward to it and can't find it. I don't know. I mean, I think it was for contributors only, contributors to ARI. If you are contributors to ARI, I would write a letter to whoever manages the contributions there, or call them and ask them if it's a video that's going to be placed somewhere. But I thought it was like a round table for donors only, and I'm not sure those go up live. But Uber and Lyft didn't shrug, which means California will keep getting away with its mistakes and strengthen their big government approach. I mean, it depends. If AB 5 is reversed, then Uber and Lyft won't shrug. They'll still be able to hire contractors. If it fails, then everybody's saying Uber and Lyft will leave the state. And then you'll get other competitors arising, but it'll be much more expensive and much less efficient. But yeah, I mean, nobody's going to shrug when they don't have the philosophy and they don't have the backbone, the moral backbone to shrug. Washington State voted last election to majorly reduce car tab taxes for light rail. Leftist politicians and judges reversed the people's choice, claiming the bailout initiative wasn't written correctly. Yeah, you can reverse it. I guess Supreme Court, the courts can reverse it if it's not objective, or if it's not by the law, if it contradicts the Constitution. It's happened in California as well. But mostly it is majority rule. Is the Electoral College just? Yeah, I think it is. I think it's basically trying to separate the elected from the majority. I think it's trying to give people across the country, in different locations, a say in what happens. If the popular vote was the only thing that mattered, you'd only campaign in the cities. You'd only campaign in the big states. You'd never campaign in Ohio. You'd never campaign in in Wisconsin. You know, he'd campaign on the East Coast, on the West Coast, and maybe Texas and some of the cities in between. You'd campaign only in highly concentrated. I think the Electoral College was very smart as a way, again, which the founders did in many levels, to separate the voters from their ultimate choice, to make clear that what we had here was not a democracy, not a majoritarian democracy. Jax writes, if you haven't seen it yet, you might like the show Warrior, 2 seasons so far on Cinemax, Amazon Prime, about San Francisco's Chinatown in the 1900s, created by Bruce Lee's writings, from Bruce Lee's writing. I saw season 1. I enjoyed it. I don't think it was great, but I enjoyed it. I'd like to see. I'll download season 2 and watch it. Season 1 was definitely enjoyable enough. It was also interesting because it was a piece of history, the conflict between the Irish and the Chinamen, the racism, the anti-Chinese racism that existed, that we know from the first immigration bill that was passed was to block Chinese immigrants. That was heavily promoted by the unions who didn't want the competition. It was a really it was quite an interesting show. So yes, I'll watch. I don't like the fight scenes, too violent and too much of them. Fighting is boring. I don't like fighting sports. I find the whole thing of fighting just boring. So I didn't enjoy the fighting scenes in Warrior, but I definitely recommend the show. If only for the history of it. It's really interesting. Okay, the next show is going to be Wednesday. We're going to do a show Wednesday, probably Wednesday and Thursday. No point in doing a show election night. You're all going to be watching Fox or CNN or, I don't know, BBC or whatever it is you watch to following the things. There's no point in doing that. Tomorrow I'm going to take a night off. It's a busy night, the busy day tomorrow. So I'll see you Wednesday. Wednesday will be my post-election show. In the meantime, have a great Monday. Have a good week. I hope you're all excited to go to work tomorrow. Jax loved the fight scenes. I know. I have weird taste about fighting. I always fast forward through fight scenes in all the movies I watch. I really don't like them. I see no point in them. But it's just my taste. What did I want to say? Yes, don't forget to like the show before you leave. We should have well over 100 likes to the show by now. Don't forget to... You want me to have a live election show, really? You'll pay? I don't see a point in it. We'll see. If there's interesting stuff going on, maybe I'll do a live election show. But I'm not into MMA. I'm not into boxing. I'm not into any sort of fighting sport. It doesn't interest me. Doesn't interest me. People beating each other up is not interesting to me. What did I want to say? Oh, yeah. Don't forget to like the show before you go. At 93, we should be at 120 easy. Who's going to put $5,000? I mean, for $1,000, I'll do a show on election night. So QEOO. If you've got $1,000, and you're willing to pay it, I will do the show on election night. What else did I want to say? Like the show. Yeah. $1,000. You're doing it $1,000? I don't know if that's so if you go to PayPal.me, Yaron Brook Show, and you make the $1,000 contribution, I will do the show on Tuesday night. I will do a live election show. I'll have one of the networks live in front of me, and I will give you my commentary as it happens. But in the next today or tomorrow, make the $1,000 contribution on PayPal.me/Yaron Brook Show, and we're on. We're on. All right. Like the show. Don't forget. So I just want to say. I'll say this. I'm trying to raise the amount of money that comes in on a monthly basis. Right. The stuff that you subscribe on my chat on my website, YaronBrookShow.com/support, or on Patreon, or on subscribe. So by $3,000, that's the number I need right now to get to where I need to get, given that I'm not doing any lecturing, not doing any speaking, and getting paid for that. So $3,000, was hoping Ron might. Yeah, I don't know what that is. What was the question? Did I miss a question? Fearless Jobanzi. Did I miss a question? I tried to answer all the questions today, so I'm looking back. I can't get back. So if you had a question that I missed, write it in the chat right now, and I'll take it on. So anyway, I'm trying to raise another $3,000 on on monthly contributions, $3,000 a month. So, those of you who don't support the show yet, I'd love to have you as supporters. Would really appreciate that. Those of you who can afford and see value in increasing it, then please do it. I'm not doing. Then please do so. If you can go from 250 to 500, if you can go from 100 to 250, if you can do to 50 to 100, 25 to whatever you can increase is greatly appreciated. If we can get it up by $3,000, I will be, and I'll stop bugging you. I'll still do the super chat stuff. We'll still do like challenges and stuff because that's part of my calculation. But I won't bug you about Patreon and about those things once we get to an additional $3,000. All right. How long of a show? It'll be 2 hours. I don't know if I can go 6 hours. And we'll have to think about what time to start it. But if you do it, and if you're serious about it, then I will, I will look at when the results expected to come in, when they start to come in, and we'll do a show, right? We'll do something. But, we'll probably start it later than usual so that we have more results in and stuff like that. So we could do that. Not $3,000 a week, $3,000 a month. So if I get an extra $3,000 a month, I'm happy. And I'll stop bugging you about these things. So if you want Securi, you can email me and we can figure it out if you want to sponsor that show, if you want to sponsor a show, the post-election show. But if you really want me to do a show during election night, I can do it. Email me, yaron@yaronbrookshow.com, yaron@yaronbrookshow.com. Email me tonight. Let's figure it out and get it done. Great. Thanks, guys. Have a great night. Don't forget to like the show before you leave. Don't forget to subscribe. Click that bell so you get an announcement for when the show goes live. And I'll see you all maybe Tuesday night. Maybe on Tuesday night.